I bought an old doll as a birthday gift. Now it's speaking to me, and it knows the truth. I don't know what to make of all this. It all seems impossible. Last week I was just looking to buy a gift for my mom, and now I am reeling at the revelation that spirits could be real. Worse still, that they could be merciful, malevolent, and everything in between. I have to try and determine if the spirit I found, if indeed it really is one, is helpful or harmful. From what I have seen so far, the truth of the answer is connected to the truth itself, or rather, one's ability to preserve it. I will tell you the truth of what I found, and maybe you can help me figure out what I should do with this thing, this doll that spoke to me. I have to do something, because the more I learn about its true nature, the more dangerous it seems. It began with a simple task. I was out looking for a last-minute gift for my mom's birthday. I should not have waited as long as I had, and I was running out of time. I had a very busy work schedule and did not have much time to look for something. Every time I ordered online for her gifts, I could tell she was a bit disappointed. She had very eclectic tastes, and I knew she would appreciate a more thoughtful gift that I had picked out in person, rather than ordered from Amazon. To that end, I resolved to check some of the antique shops and other outlets near where she lived. It was a small town, and I was not sure what I would find, but I figured it would be better to check there and find something, rather than going to a larger store for something more generic. After striking out at a few locations, I found one that looked interesting. The place was called True Antique. It seemed like just the right kind of store to find something she would like. I stepped inside and was assailed by a musty smell, mixed with the faint aroma of mothballs. I wondered if it had been a while since they cleaned up, since everything seemed a bit stagnant. Antiques, I figured, are supposed to be a bit old and musty. Not out of place, I guessed, and the old smell was fitting, if not a little difficult to stomach. I moved into the store and began looking around. I found a few trinkets here and there, but nothing stood out at first. Then I saw they had a selection of old-timey porcelain dolls. My mother had a collection of those since she was a child, but she lost most of them at some point in the past and only had a handful left. I knew this was something that she would like, so I grabbed one of the two that were on the shelf. The doll had a fine layer of dust on it. I brushed it off and examined the features. It wore a miniature Victorian-era blue dress and had light brown hair and a well-painted but almost stern-looking face. As I held the doll, I felt a strange sensation of my mind wandering. I almost fell into a fugue-like state for a moment, like I had suddenly become so lost in thought that I might just stand there for hours before I found myself again. I broke out of my stupor and considered putting the doll back. Something about holding it made me feel strange. I looked at the other doll. It wore a frayed yellow dress and had curly red hair. Its face had an almost pained expression, along with a hairline crack that made it a bit less appealing. At that point I had decided. My mother's favorite color was blue, so I pushed back my earlier reservation and decided to buy the one with the blue dress after all. I walked up to the front of the store, and an older woman with white hair and thick glasses approached me from behind the counter. She placed both hands on the counter and looked me up and down. Then she adjusted her glasses and spoke. "Ah, yes. Let's see what you have there, my friend. Oh, yes, that little one is a beauty. To be honest, it can be a bit of trouble." She slapped her knee and laughed at the statement and chortled for a few moments longer. I had no idea what was so funny about the word honest, or how a doll could be trouble. For a moment I was worried this lady had a name and backstory for these dolls that I would have to sit through, or some history lesson I did not have time to take in. She must have seen the confused and concerned look on my face, and she composed herself and continued, "Yes, well, sorry about that. Anyway, I am sure you and Matilda will hit it off. A truer friend there never was, at least if you can handle that truth, and of course, if you treat her right." She was nodding her head at her own words as if she was not even talking to me. I was starting to get the impression this shopkeeper did not get many customers, because she seemed a bit awkward with people. She suddenly turned back to look at me, almost as if she remembered I was there and she was not talking to herself, and flatly said, That will be $150. Would you like a bag? I balked at the price and was about to try and haggle when she read my intention and immediately spoke again. She is a very rare and very valuable antique. Though I will admit she did cause some trouble for the last people who bought her, so just for you, I will let her go for $80. That is my final offer, though. I have to make ends meet after all. She smiled again, though not at me, but at the doll on the counter. The whole encounter was feeling a bit creepy, but I figured I would take the offered discount and get out of there. I agreed to the bag, and the shopkeeper reverently wrapped the doll up and warned me to be careful. She is as fragile as some people's self-image and as free-spirited and open as the truth. I thanked her and left, pondering more of the strange words she had mentioned about the doll. I thought just then that I would spare my mom the weird backstory and just give her the doll for her collection. If they were supposed to have some personality, I could always direct her to the store so she could talk over the doll's backstory with the odd shopkeeper there. I made it back home and spent a bit of time getting some housework done. It was getting late at that point, and I was getting ready to turn in for the night. I was going to wrap the doll in a nicer box or bag, but I did not have the energy just then, so I decided to get some sleep. I looked at my phone and saw it was almost dead. I also saw I had a notification that the new phone charger I had ordered arrived. Before going to bed, I checked my porch for the package that was supposed to have been delivered from Amazon. I saw it was missing, and I cursed out loud and sighed. This kept happening. I swore whoever was stealing my packages was going to get what was coming to them. I went back inside and heard an odd sound. It almost sounded like singing. It was coming from the room where I had placed the doll, but when I walked in to check, there was no sound at all. I stood there in silence, questioning my mental state. As I waited, I heard another sound, almost like someone whispering something. I could not quite make it out, but it sounded like someone trying to say something, just very faintly or very far away. I looked around, trying to see if I could find the source of the odd whispers. Then I realized the most likely scenario was the most obvious. It must be the doll. The doll must have had a voice box or something. I did not think porcelain dolls could speak, but it would not be impossible to hook one up with a voice box so they could. I pulled the doll out of the bag and looked it over once again. I was not certain, but it almost seemed like its expression had softened, and it had the hint of a smile on its face, where before it had looked moody and slightly upset. I brushed off what was likely me just not remembering how its face really looked earlier, and tried to inspect the thing for a string, button, or some device that could be linked to an audio box. I looked around for a few minutes with no luck. Then I tried something I did not suspect would work, but gave it a shot all the same. I said out loud, "Hello." There was a long pause, just long enough for me to feel silly for trying to talk to the thing. I was about to put it back when I was shocked and completely freaked out when a voice did respond. "Hello, my name is Matilda. Nice to meet you." The response itself was not what had bothered me. What made me concerned and uneasy was the response had not come from an audio box in the doll. The response seemed to come from no obvious source at all. In fact, it seemed like it had just popped into my own mind, like a thought that had been willed into my own brain from another entity entirely. The intrusive thought greeting almost made me jump in surprise and drop the doll. I tried to compose myself and investigate the phenomenon further. I summoned the conviction to return the greeting to the small figure. "Hello, Matilda." There was another short pause, and then, again, the response seemed to come into my mind without any real audio cue in the quiet room. "Will you be my friend?" I was stunned by the telepathic discourse I was having with a tiny doll. I considered I might be hallucinating, but I had no idea what could be causing these type of vivid and intrusive voices if I was. I also felt uneasy at the fact that the voice was in my head and yet was clearly not my own mind. I spent so long contemplating my own sanity that suddenly I looked back at the doll and its painted face had shifted again. Now there was a look of profound sadness on it, and I realized I had not answered its question. I figured I would play along and told the odd thing, Yes, of course, I will be your friend." The answer was almost immediate that time, and I heard the voice practically shout back into my head. Great. That is so great. Thank you. I promise I will be a true friend to you, if you are always true to me. I can see many things, but I will not look into you, only speak to you, because you are my friend, and I trust you. The doll had some interesting perspectives, and I had to learn more while the psychic conversation was still ongoing. I was so fascinated that I resolved to keep talking, at least until I hopefully woke up from the bizarre dream I must have been having. I asked the most pertinent questions first. I am sorry to be so direct, Matilda, but what are you? Are you a spirit? A demon? Or some other thing that could inhabit the body you currently possess? There was another long pause, and I wondered if she was thinking about how to respond. I started to worry, since I had seen too many scary stories of haunted dolls. I did not believe strongly in the supernatural, but it would be just my luck to find a doll possessed by some soul-devouring demon. She had finally come up with her answer, and she replied, I am me, just Matilda, I think. I do not know what I am besides a doll. I think I have always been this way. I remember having a sister, and she was a doll as well. I also remember someone else, but it is blurry. My memory about myself is not the best. I remember it is my job to see things in others, to see the truth, and to help my friends. I felt a bit better at the benign response. No overtly evil behavior to fret over. I chuckled to myself at the absurdity and impossibility of the situation. I must have just found one of the more run-of-the-mill psychic porcelain dolls. The insane conversation was cut short when I heard loud music start from next door, and I groaned out loud as the crazy situation was affected by a more mundane annoyance. My neighbor was at it again. Every Sunday he had people over and played music so loud and so late it kept me from getting to sleep till well after midnight. I worked an early shift Monday morning, and no matter how many times I told him to try and keep it down, he just kept at it. He would pretend to listen to placate me, or just ignore me completely. I called the cops one time. It was particularly bad, and he has been more hostile to me ever since then. I sighed and was not sure what I would do this time. I had to get up even earlier than normal, since I had to get the flowers for my mom's birthday tomorrow. My frustration was interrupted by a soft voice, gently prodding into my annoyed mind again. What's wrong, my friend? You seem upset. I was surprised and then remembered I had been talking to a sentient doll again. I figured I had asked my questions of her, so I may as well share my frustrations with her as well. Why not, since now she was apparently a friend? It's my neighbor. I have to get up early tomorrow, and he is always inconsiderate on Sundays with the noise. He has parties over there with extremely loud music till well after midnight. I'm just tired and I need to get some sleep. Matilda replied with a request. Would you bring me over there? Maybe I can help. I almost laughed out loud at the prospect of bringing the psychic talking doll I had bought as a gift for my mom's birthday over to my neighbor's house to tell him to keep it down so I could get some sleep. My dismissive tone was noticeable, and I swear I saw her look sad again. I decided if I was already in a crazy dream, what could it hurt to indulge the curious new friend of mine? I walked over towards my neighbor's house, still in my robe and sweatpants, holding the doll in one arm against my chest with her face pointing out, like a ventriloquist that had just rolled out of bed. Before we made it to the door, Matilda spoke into my mind again. This is close enough, thank you. Please wait a moment. I stood there on my neighbor's lawn, confused and still holding the doll, which was physically there, but somehow felt absent at that moment. I was embarrassed and hoped nobody would open a window just then and see me standing there looking like a lunatic. The music had stopped, and I was afraid that it was because they knew someone was outside, but I heard nothing indoors at first. Then after a moment, I heard shouting, and there was some sort of argument going on indoors. I was about to get closer to check when I heard the familiar voice speaking into my mind again. Your neighbor is a liar. I don't like liars. So many secrets, deceptions, lies. I looked and I saw things. He kept the relationship with another woman hidden from his girlfriend. She knows now she is not happy. She will leave soon, and he will either follow her or sulk. He will not feel like partying for the rest of the night. My friend should have some peace and quiet for the remainder of the night. I was astounded by the doll's declaration. I could not believe it, but when I inched closer to the window, I heard shouts and screams of an obvious argument between my neighbor and his girlfriend. "She is just a work friend. It's not what you think. Come on, Cindy, really? You are just going to leave over a misunderstanding?" A loud slap was heard after his appeal, and an icy response of, "Fuck you, Glenn." Then the front door swung open, and I fell back and toward the side of the house to not be seen standing there, listening in on the exchange. After a moment of sitting there in the grass by the window, I was unsure if I should stand up and leave or stay a moment longer. Then I heard more coming from inside. I heard objects breaking and yells of anger, followed promptly by sobbing as my neighbor Glenn went through the entire emotional range of getting dumped, though I admitted that it sounded like he deserved it. Then I considered my situation. I had to ask the immediate follow-up question to my companion and looked down at the doll I was still holding. Matilda's painted face now wore a wicked smile, and she was clearly proud of what she had done. I had no idea just how she had done it. I asked her directly, "What was that? What did you do exactly?" She replied instantly, "I just told the truth. I told her the truth."